John 14. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. In the Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I am going there to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you with me, that you may also be where I am. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
During this past year, Craig has talked to us several times about the difference between belief and faith and trust. Belief is the consent of the mind. We can get that. Faith is a choice of the will. But trust is a commitment of the heart. 10 years ago, Shayna was born. She was a very beautiful baby with a few silky blonde ringlets and bright blue eyes, a smile that could charm the crustiest of observers. She was a perfect baby in every way that is, except that Shayna was born with a hole in her heart. Shortly after her birth, the heart specialist advised her parents that in this case, it would be best if they could raise Shayna for a few years before attempting surgery. There would be some restrictions in her activities and careful observation until she was older. There should then be a better possibility of success with the surgery, which would eventually be required to correct the problem. For 10 years, Shayna has been loved and cared for and watched. We saw her often playing on her swings, in the grocery store, holding her daddy's hand, and then running off ahead of him, looking back, just daring him to tell her to stop. Her eyes just kept twinkling. But the hole in her heart has enlarged, and surgery is necessary. But now complications have developed, and the outcome of the surgery is uncertain. Difficulties arise in all of our lives. Eventually, often unpredictably, the death of someone close to us, a life-threatening illness, financial disaster, the emotional stress from one of any number of sources, family situations, misunderstandings between friends, trouble at work. How do we meet and face such situations in our lives? To you, O God, I call, my rock, be not deaf to me. If you are silent to me, I become like those who go down to the pit. Hear the voice of my supplications as I cry to you for help. As I lift up my hands toward your most holy sanctuary, blessed is God who has heard the voice of my supplications. God is my strength and my shield. God is my strength. These words are not only found in Psalm 28, but are also part of the song Moses and the Israelites sang after God had delivered them out of Egypt, out from under the oppressive whip of a hard-hearted Pharaoh. But God does not give strength to do just any task. Recall that Moses did not want the job of going before Pharaoh to free the Israelites. He did not think up this grand plan of sending a series of plagues to wear down Pharaoh's heart to save his people. That would have been about the last thing Moses would have thought about. Moses had escaped from Pharaoh himself and was quietly living as a shepherd with a new wife and a new baby to worry about. And you know what that involves. He was concerned with food and clothing his family. And with a new baby, they would soon need more room in the tent, perhaps even another camel, or could they scrape by as a one-camel family a little longer? I know that's really sick. Oh well, huh? Can you imagine the surprise then when this quiet family man, out watching his sheep one day, suddenly heard God speak to him from a nearby bush, which has just caught fire? Not only that, but God told him to return to the court of Pharaoh. It was a new Pharaoh, the old one had passed away. But Moses was to tell this king of Egypt to release his entire slave labor force, the Israelites, and let them go free. Moses as much as told God that this was a crazy idea. Why would Pharaoh listen to someone who said to release his source of labor? That's just bad business. But God assured Moses that this was to be the plan of action and that it would succeed. With the strength of God's assurance and presence, Moses agreed, with reluctance, to accept God's assignment. Shana's parents were probably as surprised as Moses at the task they were given. Here also was a relatively happy couple anticipating the birth of a baby. This is an exciting time for most families. They certainly had not anticipated that their precious little girl would have a hole in her heart. Nor, with all the technological advances in the field of medicine, did they think that when the time came for her surgery, that there would be complications, which would make doubtful the outcome of that critical procedure. They did not expect to have a child born with a heart problem. And yet the psalmist affirms that God is my strength. God is my strength and my shield. A shield is a military protective device to ward off blows and missiles. The Israelites did not have a military confrontation with the Egyptians, although it looked like a distinct possibility. You remember that Pharaoh changed his mind about letting Moses take his motley band of Hebrews out of Egypt. Moses did not know about Pharaoh's change of heart until he and his group of newly released slaves woke up one morning in their camp on the shore of the Red Sea. As they opened their eyes to the dawning of a new day, they slowly became aware of the shaking of the earth beneath them. A glance to the east showed only the still waters of the great sea stretching for miles both to the north and to the south of them. But as they turned their gaze toward the west, all they could see was a wall of dust, moving steadily closer as the horses of Pharaoh's more than 600 charioteers stirred the sands beneath their thundering hooves. If ever there was a time for hopelessness and despair and depression, this was certainly one of those times. Backed up against the Red Sea, they had no means of defense against Pharaoh's entire well-trained and well-equipped army, moving closer and closer. They had no means of escape. A shield may also be a person who guards and protects or defends. God is our shield. God shielded the Israelites from the Egyptians by opening the waters of the Red Sea and providing an escape. God gave them hope in the face of hopelessness, faith in their time of deepest despair, and lifted their spirits from the black mire of their depression. God shielded them from the temptation to succumb to their feelings of meaninglessness and abandonment. God also shielded Shana's parents from the despair of a difficult situation. backed into the corner of a surgical procedure necessary for life, but with no guarantee for life, a mother and father despaired for their child. But God is our shield and reserves the right to protect us from hopelessness. God reserves the right to bring some good, no matter how hard it is to see. God can bring some good from even the bad situations. God is my strength and my shield. In God my heart trusts. To trust, to cling to rely on, to lean on. Moses leaned on God. He trusted God for that strength and shield. It does no good to have the strength of God and not use it. And why be equipped with God's shield if it is not put in place to be protective when it is needed? To trust God means to use the resources God has given us when the circumstances call for it. The Egyptian army began to close in on the Israelites, and the desert wind brought the dust from the horses as a warning of the horrors to come. The fine grit from the sand dust covered their bodies, getting into their hair and into their clothes, stinging their eyes, filling their mouths whenever they tried to speak. With every passing moment, their panic increased as the utter hopelessness of their situation became apparent. The sons and daughters of Israel cried out to the Lord, and they turned on Moses, who had led them into this situation, saying, "It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in this awful wilderness." But Moses said, "Do not fear. Stand by and see the salvation of the Lord, which will be accomplished for you today. The Lord will fight for you." In the face of this most desperate situation, Moses put his trust in God. He used God's strength and shield. Also faced with a desperate situation, Shana's family also had the opportunity to trust that God would be their strength and shield, no matter what the outcome of the surgery. God reserves the right to bring some measure of eternal blessing, even to our worst predicaments. On our Moses days, when we are backed up against the Red Sea, surrounded by our enemies, and when even our friends and family appear to be against us, God is our strength and our shield. And in our Shana situations, when circumstances beyond our control give us no options for action, which are very assuring, we can still trust God to be our strength and our shield. In times of grief, or dealing with serious illness, or financial disasters, emotional stresses at work, at home, between friends, God is our strength and our shield. And we can trust God for this, because this is the God who created us, who loves us, who cares for us. This is the God who became one of us, became human flesh with us, to show how much love there was for us. This is the God who lived with us, who walked with us and got his feet dusty on the roads with us, who got tired and slept with us, who went fishing with us, who ate with us, and invites us to share his meal with him. This is the God who died for us. But the bad news is never the final news. For this is also the God who rose from the dead for us, to show us who is in charge of the final outcome. And this is the God who promises to be with us always, even to the end of the age. This is the God whom we can trust with our hearts, with our very lives. God is my strength and my shield. In God my heart trusts, and I am helped. Therefore my heart exults, and with my song I will thank the Lord. It is usually only after our trials are over that we are able to see the good which God has brought from our salvation, from a situation. Moses and the Israelites were safely through the Red Sea and the Egyptian army destroyed before they sang the magnificent song recorded in Exodus 15. I will sing to the Lord who is highly exalted. The horse and its rider are hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and song. The Lord has become my salvation. This is my God whom I will praise, the God of my ancestors whom I will extol. We're going to learn to sing that song. It's a great one. I promise. We want to praise and extol our God, but at times it is more than difficult. The day Shana and her parents received the news of the need for her surgery, her parents were devastated. The doctor had said that because of the complications, there was no guarantee of the outcome of the surgery. The doctor would not even quote odds. The surgery had to be done for Shana to survive at all. But following surgery, she would either be able to live a healthy, normal life, or be an invalid, or she would die. In the car on the way home from the doctor's office, after receiving this news, the parents were trying valiantly to be brave for Shana's sake. They knew that she would be the one who had to face the surgery, a frightening thing for a 10-year-old. They knew that she would need great courage, but at that moment they were trying just to keep their own tears of frustration and fear in check. The car was filled with a heavy silence on that seemingly endless ride home. But the gloom was lifted by the sound of a clear, strong 10-year-old voice singing, "Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Little ones to him belong, they are weak, but he is strong." Shana trusted God. For Shana, she literally trusted her heart to God, and she could not wait for the outcome to sing her song. She sang it before. She believed what she had been taught all those years in Sunday school. She trusted God. She trusted God to be her strength and her shield. As her parents listened to Shana sing, they were reminded of their own faith in God's love for all of them. They began to trust God for the strength to face this surgery together, and to trust that God would indeed bring good from this entire episode in their lives. This heavy weight of despair began gradually to lift from their shoulders. The world, which had looked so dismal and gray a few minutes before, began to show color again. The trees, beginning to bud, held a faint green cast of new growth about them. Bad news, and we do get bad news sometimes, is not the final news in God's world. The good news is that Jesus loves us. Led by their child, Shayna's mother and father were also able to put their trust in God. Let us stand and sing Shayna's song together. It's hymn number 304. It's actually in your bulletin. Be seated.